2022 has been a pretty up and down year for adult animation. For every show like Smiling Friends, we get a report of HBO Max ripping shows off of its streaming service with no alternative in sight to view these shows other than illegally. It really is a strange time for fans of animation, where a lot of fans are having to justify even enjoying animation as an adult, with some arguing that animation is not even cinema. Definitely a weird time, and I'm excited to see how the world of animation progresses in 2023. But before we get there, we have to go over the best and worst of 2022. And that means looking back at every series I watched and talked about on the channel, as well as looking back at a few movies to pick what the best and worst of the year truly was. So without further delay, let's get into it. The nominees for the worst adult animated show I saw this year are as follows: Farzar on Netflix, Big Mouth Season 6 on Netflix, Human Resources on Netflix, and Slippin' Jimmy on AMC+. I did full reviews of all 4 of these shows on the channel already, so I'll keep this part relatively brief and just share why I chose these 4 for the list. First of all, Farzar is a show that already exists. It's called Paradise PD, and Paradise PD is a show that already exists called Brickleberry. It is a rehash of a rehash, the same characters with a cheap looking coat of paint and a new setting with all of the exact same jokes. This show is painful to sit through. It's genuinely difficult to watch, especially if you've seen the 2 shows that came before it. It is 100% something that people should avoid, even if they're massive fans of Brickleberry, because it has nothing new to offer to anyone. Big Mouth Season 6 is a less offensive show than Farzar for sure, but it still squanders every opportunity it has to progress its characters and grow into something more than just a factory for poop and dick jokes. As of right now, I see absolutely no reason why someone should start watching Big Mouth, especially if it leads to Season 6, and if Season 7 continues on, Big Mouth is going to go down in history as a show with a fun concept that was popular for a little while, but ultimately fell off because it could not innovate. Human Resources is an offshoot of Big Mouth, not really a spin-off because it's just Big Mouth again, but the camera is more focused on the monsters this time. This show is painful to watch. It is not an easy one to sit through. The theme song's pretty catchy. That's all I really have to say about it. It has almost all of the exact same issues as Big Mouth, except they're more grown up, I guess? More grown-up issues? So if I had to watch Big Mouth Season 6 or Human Resources, I'd probably watch Big Mouth, because at least there's a few fun musical numbers. And lastly, we have Slippin' Jimmy, a show that is so baffling to me, I don't even know why it exists. This show is really short, it has a pretty cool logo, and those are the only 2 nice things I can say about it. It's the entire funnies page on the Sunday paper, that nice big funnies page with all the comics, except all the punchlines to the comics are taken out, and all the characters are replaced by Jimmy McGill and his friends from his youth. That's how I would describe this show. It is set up with no punchline, but we're supposed to care because it's people we've seen before in a show we like. It is baffling to me that this show exists, and it's even more baffling that the target demographic for Slippin' Jimmy would probably be small children, toddlers, and it's based off of an adult crime drama. The show makes absolutely no sense, and it's awful. There is nothing nice to say about it whatsoever. So, clearly, I'm sure you can guess what my worst show of the year is. It is without a doubt Slippin' Jimmy on AMC+. How fitting that the worst streaming service also has the worst show. The nominees for the Best Adult Animated Show of 2022 are Inside Job Season 2 on Netflix, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared on Channel 4, Close Enough Season 3 on HBO Max, and Smiling Friends on Adult Swim and HBO Max. This is definitely one of the more difficult years for me to choose what the best show was, because there's two here on this list that I believe are of the highest quality possible for adult animated content, or just animated content in general. So first things first, let's get my two honorable mentions out of the way. I feel like these two shows made improvements. The first one is Inside Job Season 2. I really like this show's premise. I like most of its characters, but I had a lot of complaints in Season 1 about reference humor, not being enough stakes in the storylines that were being presented, not enough emotion, and Season 2 fixed a lot of that. It didn't fix all of it, don't get me wrong. There are still characters whose whole personalities are based around one aspect and they never grow. There's one character that his whole character is just doing drugs. That's it, that's the joke, and it gets really, really old really fast. But they improved a lot. They put a lot of emotion into Season 2. They put a lot more character with Reagan and some of the people around her. I can get behind this, and I'm genuinely excited to see what Inside Job does next, but measuring it up to the two shows I have in mind is just very difficult to do because I feel like they did things almost perfectly. So Inside Job Season 2, absolutely check it out, but not quite good enough to be the best show of 2022. And the other show that's more of an honorable mention is Close Enough Season 3. I have always really liked Close Enough. I've followed it since its release on HBO Max, just one by one as each season rolls out. I've been watching it and doing reviews on the channel. There's something cozy about this show and familiar. It almost feels like if J.G. Quintel, the guy who made Regular Show, did his own version of Friends, almost, except set in California instead of New York. That's the best way I can describe it, because when I watch Friends, I don't think Friends is a very good show, but it gives me like a cozy feeling almost of, we're just hanging out and having a lighthearted fun time. And that's the same feeling I get from Close Enough. And it's a damn shame that this show got canceled. I'm really disappointed about that, especially because I feel Season 3 was a big improvement over Seasons 1 and 2, because Seasons 1 and 2 kind of leaned into the millennial humor, which are just the same four jokes about phones and veganism and being hipsters. So it gets old pretty dang quickly, but they pulled off a bit of that for Season 3, and they really let the characters kind of speak for themselves this time. It's just a damn shame that it got canceled, but still another great show that's worth checking out. And that leaves us with our two ringers, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, and Smiling Friends. Both of these shows are nearly perfect. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, I liked everything about it, and I am just in awe at this show every single time I watch it. From the puppetry, to the 2D animation, to the 3D animation, to the stop motion, to the set design, it just blows me away. This show, visually and in execution, is flawless. And then you get to the actual substance of the show, and it's really funny and interesting throughout the entirety of it. It's a little short, I will say, but this is one of those cases where I feel like the show left me wanting more, not that it didn't give me enough, because the amount of episodes we got, I believe there's 6 or 7, not a whole lot, but the amount of quality crammed into those episodes is just astonishing. I made a complaint in my initial review about a certain twist thing that happens, a certain character that's presented. I made a complaint about that. I thought it was kind of played out. I still feel like it's a little bit played out, but upon rewatching it, I think it kind of works for what they're setting up, and I'm not going to judge it too harshly until I see exactly where it goes. So putting that out of my mind, don't have any complaints about this show. I loved it, and I would recommend it to everybody. And that leaves us with Smiling Friends, a show that I had been waiting for since possibly middle school, I think. For those of you who don't know, a long time ago, I listened to a podcast that featured a certain co-creator of Smiling Friends called Zach Hadel. And I've been following Zach Hadel and his career and his animation for a pretty dang long time. And I've been rooting for this guy. A lot of people have been rooting for Zach Hadel to get a TV show because he is goddamn hilarious. So when I heard he was getting one, Obviously, the bias came out a little bit. I was very, very excited about it. I was going to watch the entire thing no matter what, just to support Zach Hadel. But upon watching Smiling Friends, I was just shocked at the amount of quality put in, the amount of effort put in to each and every episode. The writing is top notch for a first-time TV show. The animation is not only good, but it is diverse. There is so much going on. We have 3D models, we have claymation. There's so much going on in this show, and there's so much going for it. And on top of all of the visual stuff, it's super funny. It's hilarious, and it doesn't get bogged down by any of the issues that some of these Netflix shows run into, where they run into the lowest hanging fruit comedy or lean on like current topics to make all their jokes, where they're millennial humor. I always bring up the millennial humor because it's funny for like a year and then it's not funny anymore. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I get it. We made the jokes. Let's move on. I want something that exists in a bubble that I can show someone in 3 years and it's still funny. And Smiling Friends is that kind of show. It's that funny and it feels that timeless because of the time and care put into it. So as you can see, I'm in a pretty tough spot here. I have 2 shows that I absolutely adore and I have to choose one for the best of 2022. So I will admit I used a bit of a tiebreaker to pick my winner. The tiebreaker was, when I really like a show, I tell just about everyone I know about it, and I try my best to get them to watch it so that they can, enjoy it like I did, and we can talk about it and have a good time, because I want to share the great experience I had. And I did that with Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared and Smiling Friends. Both these shows are pretty dang readily available in America, especially Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, because there's no actual path to getting it, so a lot of people have been watching it on YouTube, which again, I must stress, if you can, get a VPN and watch Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared on Channel 4, because I believe that's better for supporting Becky and Joe. Just put that out there. Do that. All right? Do that. People got mad at me for saying that in my review. Anyways, I've told everyone about these shows. But one of these 2 shows, when people watched it, every single time they fell in love with it, they would tell me about how much they enjoyed it. They watched the entire thing, and they are constantly asking me when the next season is coming out. Only one of these shows had that impact, and I think it just shows what a breath of fresh air it is in the world of adult animation, and that show was Smiling Friends. So congratulations, Smiling Friends! You are the best show of 2022. It is a tight competition, don't get me wrong. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is incredible. But frankly, I don't think I've ever had a show that I've shown to such a diverse amount of people, such a diverse group of people, and every single person I showed it to had some part that they really loved, and they watched all the episodes, and they're so excited about more of it. That kind of thing, I feel like just doesn't happen all that often. The last time I have a memory of a show taking over that much, I think it was like probably 9th grade year of high school for me, maybe 8th grade year of middle school. It was when I first saw Rick and Morty and I started showing that to people and friends started showing it to me. That was the last time I think there was a show that had this big of an impact, at least comedically, where people are like, oh, did you see this part? This part was really, really funny. This part was great. And you're just always talking about it and getting excited for more. Smiling Friends is that type of show, and I cannot wait to see what they do next. The nominees, or should I say the only films that were animated that I saw this year, are as follows. Bob's Burgers, the movie from Fox and the people who make Bob's Burgers. Mad God from Phil Tippett, and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I did reviews of Bob's Burgers and Mad God. I thought Bob's Burgers was pretty dang solid. I watched it on recommendation from my brother Luke because he really likes the music in the TV show and in the film. And I liked it too. I thought it was a pretty solid movie. Nothing groundbreaking, but pretty dang good. Mad God is a movie that I had been waiting for a very long time. I was actually going to go see it at a festival early. I missed my opportunity, so I had to wait until it was released on Shudder, I believe. And then I checked it out. Absolutely loved it. It's not really a movie, it's more of a nightmare and a showcase of stop motion animation. So if you're a fan of horror and also stop motion animation, I would absolutely recommend checking it out. I'm a fan of both these things, so I really enjoyed it, but I can say with certainty, if you are not a fan of both of those things, I would not recommend Mad God to you because it's pretty gross and pretty intense. Which then brings us to Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, my redemption film, as it were. A few years ago, like 3 or 4, I made a video hyping up this movie, talking about how excited I was about seeing Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And in that video, I believe I called Guillermo del Toro Guillermo del Toro, or something along those lines. I have always been horrible with names, and I brought that to the table that day. I put it out into the world, and people rightfully made so much fun of me for it. So finally, we're here today for my redemption, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. There it is. If that's not right, then I guess it's just repeating the cycle, and I'll live. So there's that. Pinocchio, though, holy shit. Like, holy shit. I know I didn't get like this with the other shows I loved and stuff, but this movie is one of the best things I've ever seen in my entire life. The animation is incredible. The only real downside to this movie is the music isn't the catchiest thing ever. That's the only bad thing I'll say about it. But it's still pretty good music. It's still pretty good. It's no Bob's Burgers the movie music, but it's still pretty dang good. But you're going there for a fresh take on the Pinocchio story, which in 2022, we had like 3 Pinocchio movies come out already. It's ridiculous. There's so many Pinocchio movies coming out, and they all feel like garbage. The Disney one was absolute filth, yet somehow this one from Guillermo del Toro feels like an entirely new story. It feels unique. It feels like this is an original work that hasn't been anywhere before. That's how fresh it feels. That's how unique it feels. That's just how refreshing this experience was. And I would recommend Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio to everybody. This movie is like, if anyone ever says, oh, animation isn't film or animation isn't cinema and it shouldn't be considered for Best Picture, it should have its own thing, show them this movie. All right, before I would have said show them like Princess Mononoke or maybe Akira or something like that to really, point it out. But this movie is so fantastic. I adore it. And it easily wins Best Film of 2022, Best Animated Film of 2022. I didn't see a whole lot of new live action movies this year either, so not a whole lot to pick from this year for these categories of movies. I'll do better in 2023, I swear. And with that, we have reached the end of 2022. What a year. A pretty great one here on the channel. I'm going to take this time to thank each and every one of you for your support over this last year and all the years prior. I intend to have 2023 be an even bigger year than 2022. I already have 5 or 6 videos written out for January that I just have to record and put together. I'm really excited to get this stuff ready for you guys, and I hope you are all ready for an awesome goddamn year. So to recap, worst show of the year, Slippin' Jimmy. Best show of the year, Smiling Friends. And best animated film, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Thank you all very much for watching. Happy New Year, a little late, but still have a good time out there. Do something new, try something new, all that. And I will see you all next time. Goodbye.